Hey guys, it's M4J here, and welcome back to M4J-Hatfield Racing here on F1 2021. This week we are in Brazil for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Not the Brazilian Grand Prix like they call it in the game, but the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, which I believe is its official title. We're at Interlagos though, which used to be one of my favourite tracks until this weekend, but it is not the fault of the track, it is the fault of the driver. I decided to finally bite the bullet this week and turn off all assists. That means no brake assist, no steering assist, which I didn't have anyway. Pit assist is still on actually, so that's a bit of a lie. But I've turned off traction control and ABS, which I thought was a really good idea right up until I got to the first corner of practice there. And thankfully Tom's cut that out for me. But you can see I'm really struggling here with race pace. I'm locking up all the time because of ABS. And we have a wet weekend. We have a wet practice session here, and we also end up having a wet race as well. Dry qualifying though, and it's that bit that I want to talk about a little bit later, because that's the bit that I'm most happy with, to be honest. I feel I did myself some justice there. But at this point it's just about learning. You know, I've played this game, the F1 games, for the last 2 years, and I've always had assists on, and up until this year I was using controller as well. So it's about learning how to drive with a wheel. It's about learning how to drive with traction control off, ABS off, everything like that. And also learning how to change my settings slightly, because my brakes kept locking up. So I went and changed my brake settings, the calibration settings on the wheel. Which meant I got up a guide basically for how to set your wheel and pedals up, which mostly works. I have changed a couple of things here and there. One of the things that made me laugh the most about it was I've changed my steering sensitivity and the dead zone. So I think it's 10% now of the wheel turn doesn't actually do anything. And then after that, I've increased the sensitivity to make it a bit more realistic. So you'll see here, I veer off to the side a little bit, because in reality, when I was recording this, I was making small adjustments on the wheel. But because I wasn't hitting the 10%, it wasn't counting. So you know, I had to learn again to drive the car, basically, which it's fine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining too much about it. It's a nice challenge to have. Let's put it that way. It is a nice challenge to have. But you will see a lot of mistakes this episode, and I just want to let you guys know I haven't suddenly become a crap driver overnight. It's purely because I've turned the assists off. And actually P3 here was a dry session as well. Tom's got here P3 race strategy best lap, and you can see already there's me making small adjustments on the wheel as well, by the way, which is causing me to drift offline, because I was trying to steer back to the right, but it wasn't originally detecting that. And here as well, almost going off the track. I do still lock up a couple of times here, but if you look at the delta, you can see just how much of an improvement I'm making already. And even there, I missed the braking zone completely, but because the steering sensitivity has increased, which is a problem I had in Singapore, USA and Mexico, with steering sensitivity. And even here, look, I missed the braking point, but I still make the apex pretty much because steering sensitivity is higher. Which also means these faster corners now, like that one there, I didn't have to lift. I was able to go around it flat, which for me is a huge sign of progress, because all the times in the past where I've had to lift on fast corners and end up losing a position because of it, it's very, very frustrating. So it's nice to not have to do that. And there's me finishing P3, or at least that lap of P3, and absolutely flying. I don't think I'm maxed out on my sessions, but I did do really, really well in that one in particular, which I was very, very happy about. And I keep saying very, very happy. I'm basically stalling for time now because I know that an interview with Claire is coming up in a second. So I just want to waste some time until we get into that, which is happening now.
Good day today. Let's have your take on it. Were those faults a bad omen for qualifying and the race? Do you think this team are performing as well as they could do? Great. Well, that's everything.
One might say I rely a little too much on my notes sometimes, but the times in the past where I've ended up talking over something really important because I've not checked my notes properly, it just makes me check my notes even more vigorously now before a session. But yeah, here we are then in qualifying. Q1, the intro here to Q1. Actually, I think Q1 intro has already happened. It has indeed. Yes, this is the best lap of Q1. There we go. I'm an idiot. I can't read. Struggling again for the Delta a little bit here, but you'll see once I get clocked I do get this back. And it's one of these, so that corner there, I made up a lot of time on that corner, not just here, but also during the race. And there's also this corner here, when I hit it correctly, I made up some time. And we'll ignore this bit. This wasn't good time made up. This was awful. This, believe it or not, it says Q1 best lap. Yeah, I do use the flashback here. And again, I was going to turn off flashbacks. I elected not to while I was getting to grips with the assists. But next season, the plan is to turn off assists as well. If I make a mistake, I'm stuck with it. These laps around Brazil here, they're pretty short, but there's 18 of them in a race. So if I make a mistake, chances are I can make up for it. The best example of that actually is the... was it the US Grand Prix where I spun and ended up coming back and finishing in the points? So I know I can do it. I know there's time to do it. Doesn't necessarily mean I want to do it that way, but it is what it is. But you can see here, going through the center S's, we were 3/10 over the Delta, and now we're, what's that, 6.5 tenths underneath it, or coming up to 7 tenths underneath it. Which for me, that's a good lap. That was a very good lap for me. I will stress that for me, that was a very good lap. For everyone else, that was probably an atrocious lap. However, I was still faster than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drivers, which got me into Q2, which is where we are here. And again, not a bad lap there, but I do my second push lap, which starts off red. You can see here I'm clocking in with the S's as well. That's actually a really, really good section of driving there, if I do say so myself. And again, I'm judging it off my own datum here, so some of you might be looking at that thinking that's terrible, but for me, that's good. And I did really well through there too. Lifting and coasting is something else I've been learning to stop the brakes from locking up. So you see I'm actually lifting off the throttle a little bit before corners, and then like using some engine braking. And something else I'm learning is to downshift as well as I'm braking to get the engine braking in too. And that's how you stop yourself from locking up, because you use the engine braking on top of the disc brakes to actually slow the car down. This is the section, the uphill, downhill, uphill section. This is the bit of Interlagos that I used to hate. But during this race, I actually found it the easiest part of the track to drive, which might sound insane. For most of the race, I was following a car directly in front of me, and I was just following their line, basically, and then using the pit straight here to try and attempt an overtake.
That's giving you P14.
Again, though, I wasn't as fast as I should have been. You can see here I struggled to get out of Q2, and in fact, I didn't get out of Q2. So, I think I'm where I need to be with the AI level and everything like that, and you'll see what I mean in the race here as well.
Welcome along then to the place where heroes and history are made. It's where the 2008 title was decided in the final corner. And it's the place, a year later, that Jenson Button stormed through from 14th on the grid to claim his one and only Drivers' Championship. It's Interlagos, and it's time for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Interlagos, always a very special race here in Brazil. It's a 2.7-mile circuit with 9 lefts and 6 rights for a total of 15 corners. But it's a wet one today, so grip and visibility will be at a premium, and the drivers will need to be careful coming up the hill in Sector 3, the scene of many an accident over the years. And as always, a man with plenty of racing experience joins me in the commentary box. Today it's Anthony Davidson. Tell me, Ant, you're no stranger to surviving the melee of Turn 1, so how do you keep out of trouble when there's so much going on around you?
Well, the throttle goes both ways, Crofty. You've got to have the discipline not to try and win the race on the first lap, so always be prepared to lift early and give those around you more space. Trying to be the last of the late breakers with half a dozen cars around you may pay off from time to time, but it's also a great way to lose your front wing.
Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Good job yesterday from Valtteri Bottas. The Finn starts from pole position, and it's Lewis Hamilton alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Perez, Norris, Charles Leclerc and Sainz, Vettel, Fernando Alonso, Stroll and Max Verstappen. They've taken a grid penalty. The engineer, Russell, Kimi Raikkonen and Gasly, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Giovinazzi, Tsunoda, Nikita Mazepin and Esteban Ocon. Latifi, Mick Schumacher. They've taken a grid penalty. Tigtum and Daniel Ricciardo fills the last spot on the grid. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head to trackside for today's race.
Okay, so before I expand on that previous point I made before Crofty interrupted me, I will just say that this is take 2 of the start of the race. The previous one, so the first time I just crashed completely, spun out, crashed, because I put the pedal down and didn't account for the fact that I had no traction because it's soaking wet. It's not wet tyre conditions, it's definitely inters, but you can see I'm really like tiptoeing my way around these opening laps. And then after lap 1, I completely spun out and crashed and ended up just restarting the race, which is where you join me now. And that was actually a pretty decent overtake there on Schumacher, I believe that was. I did have some moments in this race. I did have some moments at the start here where I genuinely thought stuff was going to happen. But you saw there I got a little too optimistic and locked up. And that just put me completely offline going into this section. And then there was another lock up there. And it was awful. If it was a dry race, I reckon I could have made it, maybe had a points finish. But learning how to drive the car with the assists off, and especially doing it cold turkey like I'm doing here, it was a stupid idea in the grand scheme of things, but I still am very glad I did it. I am very glad I did it. And you know, I might not have got through Q2 into Q3, but I think I'm where I need to be with the AI level, especially while I'm in this learning process right now. I completely burned through these tyres, by the way. I was debating pitting at one point. You'll see me asking Jeff a few times during the race what the weather conditions are like. I was praying that it would dry out and everyone would pit for slicks, and I can use that as an opportunity to get out of these tyres. Sadly, it rained for the entire race. Slight spoiler alert there. But you'll see I end up stuck on these tyres for the entire race because I didn't want to pit and make things worse for myself. I am slowly dropping further and further down the grid though. What are we on? Coming up to lap 9 here. That was naughty from, I think that was Mazepin. Yeah. Forces his way in front, Tom said, and that is exactly what happened here. He did force his way in front. I think the problem here was I learned to drive the car in the wet conditions in P2. Then P3 in qualifying came around, and I basically perfected in my standards driving the car in dry conditions. And then obviously the race comes around and it's soaking wet again. And locking up in intermediates seems to be something I'm very good at in this game. That was a dick move from Latifi as well. Pulled in front and then brake checked me. Do not like that. Do not like that. And then Ocon lets himself through and Tictum lets himself through as well. And now I'm running stone dead last. And you can see I keep the tyres up on screen here because I just want you to see how badly I am burning through these tyres. You're not supposed to be able to do what I'm doing in wet conditions, but here I am. And it's just lock up after lock up after lock up. Look, there's another one. I end up going straight on. Ocon does retire though, so thankfully we don't finish dead last. I don't actually know what happens to him, but he's on the left-hand side there. I think it was mechanical failure. I was meant to check and I forgot. I think it was just mechanical failure. But yeah, this race becomes a bit of a disaster at this point. Every time I nail a section, like that little section there and going around the S's here, I was pretty pleased with this. A little slow, but pretty pleased with this. You can see I'm slowly putting the throttle down to make sure we don't wheel spin. But then the very next corner, which is this one here, chances are I'll lock up and undo all that good work. There's the lock up, there's the run wide, and if there was someone behind me right now, they'd be licking their lips at the opportunity to overtake. It is what it is. Lifting and coasting was my friend, and I did, on the restart, you saw I was testing out different methods for catching up, and obviously the front of the field, they're always going to pull away. You know, you got your Bottas's, your Hamiltons, your Verstappens, your Perez's. They're just going to go. You're not going to catch them. Not at this level. Not in the first season. But the back markers, you know, Schumacher, Mazepin, Latifi, Russell, even Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, they were there for the taking had I been able to control the car better. And at the start of the second race, which is the one you're watching now, I did keep up with them for the most part, but I think I got just a little too greedy, a little too quickly, and tried to pull off some maneuvers that just weren't going to work. There's only one place really you can overtake in Brazil, and that's the straight that we're on now. The not so straight, because it's got a massive kink in the middle of it, but you know what I mean. The pit straight here. This is my fastest lap as well, is it? Wow. Starts off by running wide. I think there was a flashback here as well. What lap is this? Lap 16. Oh, sorry, lap 14. The one I just completed was the fastest lap. This one is I get blue flagged, yeah. And I spend ages trying to pull over. Tom cut this out, actually, but I had a moment in practice where I had Sainz behind me, who I think was on an in-lap. And I was on an in-lap. But he kept pulling like right up behind me, and every corner he was running alongside me. But every time I slowed down to let him past, he would slow down too. It's like he didn't want to overtake me, even though we were both heading to the pits. It was a really, really weird moment. Oh, I think I spun out on that little bit as well. And then, yeah, end of the race. Lap 16 to the end of the race, it says now. So I have one more lap left. Basically, lap 17 was the end of my race, because obviously the leaders are on lap 18 at this point. Here comes Carlos again. There's a coincidence. And then we cross the line. Now, a lot of people are probably going to look at this and think, crap race. And to be honest, I'm looking at this thinking crap race as well. But at the same time, I'm still very happy with how I did, considering assists are now completely off. You know, it was a steep learning curve. Very, very steep learning curve. But I reckon on a dry track with a good start, I reckon I can finish in the points still.
And Mercedes have pulled off a great victory here today. Anthony Davidson, what helped them deliver this result, do you think?
Well, I honestly feel it was down to the driver and car today. I mean, we can talk driver skill all day, but if you don't have a solid team to back that, you're never going to get anywhere. When you hit that sweet spot of having both an excellent driver and an incredible car, that's when you see results like those we witnessed today.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners today. It's a great result for Lewis Hamilton, who moves further ahead at the top of the table. After an incredible day of racing, who was your driver of the day, Ant?
Mick Schumacher gets my vote today.
It's time to check out the constructors' standings. No change in the top spot, but with today's points, their hold on the lead is getting weaker. After an event like that, who knows what the sport has in store for us next time? Be sure to join us again as we continue to bring you the latest excitement in Formula One.
Good day today. Let's have your take on it. Your teammate beat you today. Was it a setup issue or something else? Do you have any comments about the collisions? Appreciate your time.
Okay, so normally this is the part of the video where I talk about my highlights, you know, commentate on what you're seeing on screen and things like that. But this time I'm going to do a little bit of roasting of my driving, but I'm also going to be quite positive about my driving. So, assists are off. You know, normally the gloves are off, but in this case the assists are off. Now, I had a really bad start to the first race, which is why when I restarted, I was a little bit more careful going around here. But if you actually look at this bit, the cars in front are getting away a little bit, but 2 corners later, I've caught them up again. So the car is quick down the straight still, I can manage that. And around this corner, I actually did okay. In the past, I used to struggle with traffic, but apart from running wide a little bit here and there, I don't mind following cars in front now, because I find myself copying their moves, and that's how I manage to pull off overtakes and things like that. You just get right behind them, get the slipstream, pull out, zip round them. That's the plan. The worst I did in this race was when I was driving by myself. You know, after having my little offs and my little spins and things like that, and after Tictum and Latifi got past me, it was very, very difficult to keep on track, follow the line. Even though the track was actually drying out towards the end. It hadn't stopped raining, but it was raining less. And there were lines starting to appear that I should have followed, to be honest, but I was unable to. So, like I said just now, I think a dry track, good qualifying, good start, I reckon I can finish in the points still. I think it's going to take me another 10 or so races to get used to driving with assists off. We are going to do a season 2 of probably 10 races, in fact, so that's quite appropriate. But otherwise, you know, I will struggle, but I'm okay with struggling because I am learning, and that's the main thing. But yeah, I'm going to start wrapping up this video here, guys. I'm going to try and finish before the end for a change. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series. Drop some comments down below if you want to give me some tips on how to drive with assists off. Feel free to do so. Otherwise, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support. And until next time, I will see you soon.